G'day punters. Had some great emails coming in over the course of the last couple of weeks over the New Year period, and thought it'd be only fair that I put together a bit of a show here to kick the week off. It's been a strange week with obviously all the public holidays and racing on unusual days, and we had the change of Caulfield from Saturday to Sunday, so good time to do a show and get us all back on track. Very normal week this week. We've got just a nice week ahead with Sandown on Wednesday and then Flemington on Saturday, and a couple of other interesting meetings in the mix there as well. But I'm really looking forward to getting out to Sandown on Wednesday and then backing up at Flemington on Saturday. So just let me start off with, I wanted to give a shout out to a great correspondent, Stu, who he lives out there near Sandown, and he's always provided me with great info if there's any dodgy weather out there at Sandown. And Stu also sends through some terrific info on some other horses and so forth. He's a ripper, Stu, and keep it up, Stu, and hopefully a couple of those ones we've got our eye on in the coming months might pay dividends for us. Part of one of Stu's recent emails also was just talking about how he really likes the combination of wide draws for on-pace runners at Sandown, particularly on the Lakeside course and particularly at the 1400 metre races. And in that conversation we were talking about We Take Manhattan, who unfortunately got caught in the last stride there last Wednesday. But it's a really good point. I think if you've got the right jockey on those kind of horses and they sit a little bit wider on the profile out of the gates, and this can be at the 12 on the Lakeside course, the 1200, the 13s and the 1400s, and obviously on the Hillside course it starts at 1300. The jockeys that are clever enough to sit out a little bit wide on the profile until they get to the top turn, and then making sure they're clear of the field and use the momentum of the downhill run there on the turning section of the course and then into the home straight, they can gain a real advantage without using any additional energy. So it's a very good tactic. Bo Mertens is one that's particularly good at it. Like seen recently, it's a ride of that nature on Orient Line, but there's a lot of cases of Bo doing that over the last 12 months or so. Regan Bayliss is another one who adopts that tactic. Craig Newitt did it quite successfully on a number of occasions, but he's over in Tassie these days. So yeah, really good point, Stu, and I think that's right. I'm always keen to find those wide draws from those back straight starts at on the Sandown courses. So just while we're talking about Sandown, last week I went out and walked the track. That track is in magnificent order. Tim Bailey and his team out there have done just such a superb job, and that track has been a pleasure to bet on for the last 12 months. So many horses run to their ratings, and the reality is the vast majority of races at Sandown on both courses are decided by the tempo, really, and where the horses are positioned. Now, last Wednesday, it's summer, it's a good track. You've got moderate horses, and that means that if the stronger horses get on pace, they're going to be incredibly hard to beat because the horses behind them don't have the talent to run past them, given that they're going to be running pretty strong sectionals over the final two sections of the race. So, but there were some cases during the card of horses making good ground. Our Chinquilla, Nina Rules, and the most obvious example of a talented horse on that card, probably the most talented horse, was Call Me Handsome, who did everything wrong, got at least 6 lengths from the leader and ran it to 3/4 of a length despite not having a clear run on the straight. So any suggestion that there was bias in that track is completely ludicrous. Now, I tend to ignore the stuff that happens on Twitter. Things get drawn to my attention, and normally I just let it go through to the keeper. But on this occasion, it needs to be called out. Drew from the Profits sent out a ridiculous tweet after race 2 that you had the lead to win on that course and that it was hopelessly leader biased. That's just ridiculous, Drew. It was after race 2, and at that point, no leader won. The first race was won in a very, very slow race, in a bunch finish, by the favourite who sat 1 by 1. And race 2 was won by a first starter that sat outside the lead. Now, for the rest of the card, the leaders that won, they were tempo related races, And just because leaders win, it doesn't indicate bias. It just indicates that that's potentially where the better horses were. And I'll tell you what's not an indicator of bias, Drew, is if you've got a race wrong or it doesn't pan out like you expect, that doesn't mean the track's got bias in it, mate. And when you're just looking for excuses for your own misfortune, just take a deep breath before you tweet stuff like that out, because those guys at the track, Tim Bale and his team, and all the other track managers, do a tremendous job. They work extremely hard, and they don't deserve crap like that. So anyway, we'll just move right on past that. Now, just talking about our run recently, me and my subscribers, obviously we got stripped at Pakenham going back to early December, and since then we've been fighting really hard. We've had mixed results, some good days and bad days. The rub of the greens really hasn't fallen our way, but we're hanging in there, so we're sort of fighting our way through it. And I just want to say that every good run I've ever had has been preceded by this type of situation where you're doing a lot of good work, the results aren't quite falling your way, but you stick at it, don't panic, continue to back the right horses at the right prices, and then a run of good results comes. So I would point just a recent example is if I go back to July, I think we had at one stage 7 losing metro meetings in a row, which is very unusual. And then we barely had a bad meet after that period through August, September, October. We hardly had a losing meeting. So stick in there. We're doing a lot of good work, and a run of good results is not far away. I had a really good email on that basis from Ray, who's a regular correspondent. He just talked about the importance of staying in play and not getting frustrated, chucking the toys out of the cot and saying, oh, I'm having a month off or whatever, because then it's hard to catch up. So, some people might need a break, that's okay, but for me, I like to keep going. It's all right to chip down a little bit and just ride your way through things. I mean, things haven't been terrible lately, they've been okay, but you've had to punt really well. So, because, we're dealing this time of year with a lot of moderate horses, and there's not a lot of difference between them. So you sort of do need things to go your way, but, at this time of year, I tend to back a few more runners. I try to back the key runners in the race at the top of the market, and if I can get myself set up into a good position, then I'll save on, have small savers on a lot of other different runners. And just as an example, I had a very small bet yesterday on Sheriff John Stone, which turned what would have been a bad losing race into a okay result. So on the basis that I marked at $16 and it got out to nearly $30 on Betfair. But I think in the end I might have backed 7 runners in that race. So it's just what you've got to do to keep yourself in play and try to keep things ticking over until the horses that you've really targeted start to get those photos or get a little bit more luck and things like that. So we did have one really good result last week for my Wednesday subscribers with Patriot Act, and I just wanted to talk about a really good friend of the show and a great man, Rexy, who emailed me and texted me pretty much every race day. Rexy and I are communicating over one thing or another, and there he was last Wednesday, set up at Ha Long Bay over there in Vietnam. Now, because of the time distance difference, Rexy had to get up at 4:30 a.m. and because his wife does not want to be woken up at that time, he's had to sneak into the bathroom and set himself up on the Brasco, hitting refresh, waiting for the set to come through to try and get the prices. And as a result of all that hard work, Rexy managed to get I think it was $17 and $4.40, or it might have been, thereabouts anyway, Patriot Act. So well done, Rexy. Good work there on the Brasco. I had another good email from Bob. Bob emailed me about the prices on the set and whether I'm saying, because the set goes out at 9 o'clock in the morning, whether I'm saying that the prices on the set are what I think that they're my estimation of the SPs, and whether you should look at that and not take any price under those, take no unders based on those prices. So I replied to Bob in some length, but basically what I said to Bob is, no, that's not really quite right. It's what that is when the set goes out, that are my best assessment of the market to 100% based on all the information I can gather by 9 AM race day. Now, sometimes I'll stick really solid to those prices. Other times, other information will become apparent through the course of the day due to the market, or just some information will come available that will cause me to reassess those prices. So, just one example, on New Year's Day at Flemington, I'd marked, there was the two key runners in a race were Darren last week and Civil Disobedience. So I'd marked last week favourite, I think it was 320, and Civil Disobedience 5-1. Now, it became apparent during the course of the day that Civil Disobedience was the only horse they really wanted to back. So I sort of took my collective percentage of those two horses and reallocated it, and then adjusted my bets. So I think when I set the Sandown, I might have had 5 units on last week and 2 units on Civil Disobedience. I ended up having 4 units on Civil Disobedience. So, this is the sort of thing that I do, and it's really based on when information becomes available and how reliable that information is. If you've got a really strong opinion that, no, these are the right prices, I'm not touching them, and that often happens with me, I'll just stick solid. But if I think there's reason to believe that additional information, I will make adjustments. So I hope that helps people that are looking at those prices. Along the same vein, Brian emailed in about heavily backed runners, and he provided recent examples of Widgie Turf, not yesterday at Caulfield, but its prior start at Moonee Valley, and Aussie Choice at Sandown. I think it was 2 Saturdays ago. Brian, I think when you get these really heavily backed runners that just keep firming until jump time, particularly in high liquidity type races on Saturday races, it's because a number of factors have lined up for the big teams and they've all found a runner, and once the momentum starts, it just doesn't stop. Now, it's about them having an edge on the field in terms of the expectation of the rating they'll produce or the performance they'll produce, and often if they've also got a favourable map situation. So I mean, there's a number of factors, and every case can be slightly different, but it's identifying them ahead of time is something that I put a lot of work into, and I get some right and some wrong, but I get enough right that it works for us. It's really just about having some understanding of what the factors those big teams look for, and like I said, it's often about them having a talent margin on the field combined with the map. I mean, they're the two key things, and then the pattern of the day falling to the favour of those horses. So in Widgie's Turf case, the pattern of the day wasn't advantageous, but it wasn't disadvantageous, and if you trusted that wet track rating that he produced first up at Sandown, he had a clear talent edge on that field at Moonee Valley. In the case of Aussie Choice, all you had to believe is that he wasn't going to be flat off the 2 big performances in Adelaide and Caulfield coming to Sandown. Other than that, the map, the pattern, his rating edge on that field was all there. And particularly if you were able to get rid of Thielberg as a strong winning chance in that race and put that percentage into Aussie Choice, you could get that horse into the price it got to, and it makes sense. So yeah, it's always a challenge. It's an interesting part of the game. And Brian was also asking whether any of that shortening was to do with corporate betting back. Maybe a little bit, but to be quite honest, Brian, a lot of that betting back that used to be a real strong part of the picture, not that many years ago, certainly a decade ago, it's almost evaporated. The corporates don't do a lot of betting back with each other, and they actually hate taking bets off each other these days. So there is some that gets back on course and so forth, but it's nowhere near as big a part of the picture as it used to be, with the corporates, heavily engaged in just profiling punters and playing the man. So anyway, that'll do us for part 1. I've got a couple more things on my list here, so I'll just stop the video now and we'll come back and do a second part.